This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Well, hey there and happy Thursday. Welcome to She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate you listening. You are what makes this podcast a podcast. I couldn't do it without you, quite literally. So wherever you are in the world, I really appreciate you listening. And if you're new here, welcome to the show. There are quite a few episodes in the archives for you if you want to head back to the archives and binge listen after this episode. And don't hesitate to email me if you have any questions or want to say hi. My email address is kinsey@shecreatesbusinesspodcast.com. I would love to hear from you. Before we get into today's introduction, I just want to remind you really quickly, as a podcast listener, you are hearing it here first. Come back to the podcast next Tuesday, so in a handful of days here, November 21st, 2017, I have a huge surprise for you, something I have been working on. I have been working on this for so long, for months and months and months, and I cannot wait to finally share it with you. I truly believe it's going to be so incredibly valuable in your wedding business, and you're going to love it. So come back on November 21st. You get the first look at it. It's not actually officially launching to anyone else until next Friday, Black Friday. Hello. But next Tuesday, the 21st, podcast listeners only get to it. So I will see you back here Tuesday, November 21st for the scoop. Let's get into today's interview with Beth Johnston. Beth Johnston is just a delight and a joy. I enjoyed this conversation so much. She's actually my first travel designer who really specializes in destination weddings and honeymoons. She's the only guest I've had on the show who that is their one specialty. That's all they do. Except for, I did have Zahira Domanesh who did that, but she did it in her own country of Puerto Rico. So she said that was her main clientele, was people who were coming to the area to have their wedding. And Beth's business is different than that. She actually goes to the area. So she specializes in helping people go to other areas and not like come to where she's from. So little different there. So I was really, really looking forward to having her. Before we get to the show and the interview, let me tell you a little bit about Beth. She's an avid traveler, a newlywed, she's a retired educator, and she's a mom to a modern day adult Brady Bunch, which is heavy on the boys, as she says. She absolutely loves helping people. Her entire life has truly been dedicated to helping others. She has over 30 years of experience in elementary education. She dedicates work and some of her free time to organizations that help stray pets. She volunteers, she does charity work, and it really brings her joy to see others happy, and you're going to see that in her during this interview. Travel has always been a part of her life, and experiencing new cultures and new places is what really lights her up. And the beach has been and always will be her happy place. And that was even more true when she married the love of her life last year on a tropical beach in Punta Cana. And it was a total fairy tale, which really having that incredible experience for herself is what made her even more passionate about helping others to create their own dream destination wedding and honeymoons. And that's how she became a travel designer. She decided to specialize in destinations because, as I mentioned, travel has always been part of her life. And you will not find anybody more passionate about travel than Beth Johnston. So without further ado, let's go to the show. I know you're going to love her as much as I do. Beth Johnston, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so happy that you are here. You finally, listeners, you don't know this, but Beth and I have trying to get our schedules coordinated for a long time. And actually, more honestly, I have been all over the place like a crazy woman, and we've had 2 interviews scheduled, and then I was like, hey, I got this new job, and then, oh my gosh, who even knows? So Beth, thank you so much for your patience. I'm so glad we're finally doing this.
I am too. I'm so happy to be here, and actually I've been listening to the podcasts, and I am honored to be part of them. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Oh, it's totally my pleasure. So I gave everyone that professional bio that we all have at the beginning of the show so they know a little bit about you, but I would love for you, in your own words, to just tell us who you are, what you're doing in the wedding industry. Go for it.
Okay. It's kind of crazy that I'm in the wedding industry because I am a retired elementary educator. So I spent 30 years educating elementary students, K through 4, and I was an administrator for 4 years. I did K through 6 in that. And so, but it's interesting because when you go backwards, my degree was actually in travel and tourism when I graduated from college, my undergrad.
Oh, you're kidding.
I'm not.
How'd you get into teaching then?
So it's kind of a funny story. When I graduated, actually, when I have parents who are both educators. So when I went into college, I thought, oh, yes, that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a teacher. And I got in, and the industry was saturated. And so I thought, well, I don't want to get out of college 4 years later and not have a job, right?
Right.
So I thought, well, I'll do something different. And I loved to travel. So I said, oh, this looks good. Michigan State University offered a program in their business school. And I thought, okay, travel and tourism, perfect. Went through 4 years of college, got out. The country was in a recession. That was in the early 80s. And I got a job in a travel agency, but I was more like the boss's gopher. So I did a little bit of Amtrak sales, and then I went around, drove around, got him coffee, took his laundry, and did things like that, which really didn't give me a lot of insight into the industry. So then I went and took care of a sick uncle who was dying from lung cancer, came back from that, got a job bartending at a Bennigan's. And after that, I was their trainer. And somebody said, well, why aren't you teaching, Beth? Because you're really good at training. And I said, isn't that interesting? So I went back to the University of Michigan, got my teaching certificate, and that's how I ended up teaching. So fast forward, got married, had 3 kids, got divorced, retired from my teaching job a couple of years ago, and was planning my own destination wedding. So I hired a travel designer to help me with that. And so after that was last February 2016, when we got married in Punta Cana on the beach. It was the fairy tale wedding, right?
Yes.
And it was a friend of mine from high school that we had reconnected on Facebook. Good old social media, right?
Gosh, social media is good for so many things.
You never know where it's going to take you, do you?
You don't. You don't, and I love it.
I do too. And so after that, I approached my travel designer and I said, hey, listen, I would love a part-time job with you now that I'm retired. And she said, well, I don't really have a part-time job. However, I can become your host and you can be an independent contractor. And I said, well, tell me a little bit more about that. So then I did a whole bunch of research on host agencies and how that all works. And lo and behold, last April, she and her husband and my husband and I met with them, had dinner, and that's where I started. And that's where Beth's Beautiful Getaways had its inception, was based on my own destination wedding. So the travel designer that I worked with, Tammy Santini, she specializes in destination weddings and honeymoons. And at first, I was kind of more romance travel. Mm-hmm. But after learning from people, I don't know if you're probably familiar with the Conquer Club and Natalie McNeil and that whole.
Oh, yeah, you bet.
Okay. So Natalie McNeil got on a call last November with me and said, Beth, you need to niche down. You can't market to all these people. I said, okay, interesting. So I niched down. And I am Destination Weddings and Honeymoons and got a new website, and here I am.
Okay, you know what I really like about this is that even though your story, and I think you know this, like I'm almost 30, but I think even though your story happened like before some of the listeners, even started their journeys, it is exactly the same. It's the same. We go to college. I didn't even finish college, but we have jobs that kind of are like these are great, we can do them and we're good at them, but they're not exactly what we want. So we kind of, drift around a little bit, then we land on something and it's great for a while. In your case, that was teaching, and that was, more than a while. So that's wonderful, but it's good for a while. And then we find a new passion. And a lot of times it's because we were either involved in the wedding process somehow, or we did it for ourselves for our own wedding, or we did it for a friend's wedding. And so just the similarities here it's so fascinating to see. Just, people, we're not that different, is what I'm trying to say.
We are not. And being on the kind of the upper end of the scale here, it's, you can teach an old dog new tricks.
Oh my gosh, yes. First of all, you're not old. Second of all, yeah, yes, I don't think there's any reason to stop learning or to stop growing or to be interested in new things. And that goes for everybody. I don't care what age you are. I think to me that goes for everyone.
Absolutely. I'm a lifelong learner, and I believe everybody should be a lifelong learner. I think that's it helps you keep you young and keeps life interesting.
That's exactly right. So I'm curious quickly, and you might have mentioned this, but when you got on the call last year with Natalie McNeil, she told you needed to niche down. What were you doing before? What were you doing, or I guess, kind of putting out into the world before that call?
So I was kind of all over the place, because what you think when you're new in a business is, oh, I'll just take anything, right?
Yeah.
So you're kind of desperate for the sale, to book or whatever. And I've learned so much since then, and I'm not desperate for the sale anymore. I want to make the process for the bride and or groom like mine was, which was memorable, easy, less stress, all of those things. Those are really important to me. I'm a people person. I love to connect with people. And so that's kind of where all of that was going. And so that I was kind of quote unquote romance travel, right?
Oh, okay.
which was just too broad. So that's kind of where we went when she said but she looked at my website and I tried to hire locally and have someone do it, but they didn't get my vision. I'm sure many people out there can relate to that in the wedding business.
Totally.
They just didn't get who I was and what I wanted. I met another travel professional, a millennial, who was so kind to me. And she said, well, here, let me change a few things around for you. And she did it all for me for free. But then after Natalie's advice, I approached her and I said, hey, listen, let me pay you to help me with my website. And she did. And I think it's gorgeous. So that's kind of how all that kind of weaved around and transpired.
It is gorgeous. And I love your opt-in. You have a quiz at the top of your website. I mean, you know this, so listeners, Beth has a quiz at the top of her website. And I think that's such a brilliant opt-in. Can you kind of tell us how that's performing for you?
You know what? The opt-in is your ideal honeymoon destination. And I chose like 4 different options of honeymoons that people had taken or that I thought would be interesting to people. And I created this quiz, and it took me all day one day. This is the thing when you're learning all of these technical things when you're over 50, it's a little more challenging.
Hey, has nothing to do with how old you are. Everybody's learning new things all the time. I just spent all day the other day on my Squarespace site.
Right. So I finally learned I have to farm that out because I'm not going to spend all that time doing that. So anyhow, but for the quiz, I went ahead and I did that. And people love it. It's a fun little quiz. Mm-hmm. And then people can opt in or out of my travel tips newsletter. What I have learned, and I'm sure all of your listeners know, is that social media is great. It's a great avenue to get people to you. But to keep people, you have to have them on a list with you because you own your list. You don't own the social media. And we all know Instagram, Facebook, they're changing all the time. Pinterest, even Pinterest. And the algorithms are changing. And all of a sudden, something happens and you're shadow banned or your your hashtags aren't working. So those are the things that I've learned. And so to get people onto my list, I wanted something fun.
And what tool did you use to build that quiz? Do you remember?
I am thinking it was Quizzer, QZZR.com. And to have it, we had to play around with it to get it to work. And so actually what people do is they sign up and then I put the link for it in the welcome email because you have to pay for it if you want it to automatically link.
That's
that was
right.
Something else I learned.
Oh, okay. I was just looking at a quiz software the other day. I don't think it was Quizzer, but I can't remember what it was. But I love the interaction of that kind of opt-in. Like,
me too.
It's fun and it's like a surprise at the end for them.
Right. I've taken a couple different ones. I know that Denise. Oh gosh, lucky bitch. What's her
Denise Duffield Thomas?
Yes, she has a quiz out, and then so does Kay Putnam for her branding. Have a quiz out about what archetype you are and that kind of thing. So quizzes are just fun. Everybody loves to do a little quiz, and those ones on the Facebook page that you do all the time by Meow or Nemstast or what, those are fun to do.
Yes, I know. And like BuzzFeed, they rake it in on those.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, I am interested. So you got on this call with Natalie McNeil. She told you to niche down. You updated your website. You did the thing. Now, tell me how you're marketing your services because they are so highly niched. It's destination weddings and honeymoons, and that's it. And I love that. That's beautiful. So tell me how you're marketing your services as of today on this call.
Okay, so I am marketing my services mostly right now by social media. I have also taken the free ones on like the Wedding Wire, the Knot. I haven't gone paid yet. I might in the future, but a lot of people have advised that perhaps it doesn't give such a great return on your investment. So mostly I do Instagram. I have a Facebook business page. I am on Pinterest. I have LinkedIn. I have Twitter. I would say the two I use the most are Facebook and Instagram. And Facebook has probably given me the most leads. And I think it's because it's a matter of people knowing you, liking you, and trusting you. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my friends see what I'm doing, and then they refer me to somebody, or they contact me for their own travel. Because I do other travel, but that's not my niche. That's not what I'm marketing to.
Right.
So I just said I'm setting up a birthday trip for somebody, a friend of mine, a hockey dad that I knew through my son, and to surprise his girlfriend for her birthday next year. So just little things like that kind of come up, and I do. But absolutely, the marketing right now is mostly social media and, of course, referrals. And so my newsletter, the one I just sent out recently to my list, was, hey, listen, can you help me with referrals? Because those people know me. I'm in their inbox every 2 weeks. And those are the people that are going to say, hey, I know this gal Beth, and she does weddings or destination weddings or honeymoons. And my son said something to me last night at dinner. He said, hey, Tommy Burns, one of his hockey buddies, wants you to do their honeymoon. I said, oh, great. He says, what do I get?
He knows. Yeah, he knows. What's my referral fee, Mom?
They're funny.
So oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Yeah, he's like, I'm not doing this for free. Yeah, charge what you're worth. We always hear that, right?
Absolutely.
Hilarious. So that, I feel like I kind of want to shine a light on that a little bit. You just said that you sent an email newsletter out to your list and you asked for referrals. I think that's a really important point because I think sometimes we forget to do that. We forget to, in a lot of capacities actually, because really what that is a roundabout way of asking for the sale. And I hear time and time again from guests on the podcast how difficult that can be. So I think what a great way to shoot out a really genuine email and just say, hey, if you know of anyone who could use my services, let me know, because people aren't always thinking about you. Like they're not always thinking, gee, how can I refer Kinsey or how can I refer Beth? But if you remind them, it doesn't mean they're unwilling. It just means they got their own stuff going on. So if you remind them with such an easy email, it may not happen right away, but what a great way to just say, remember me, like you liked my services, let me know if you have any friends. And so I feel like it seems like a simple thing to do, but what a great tip.
Right. So one of my goals with the Conquer Club is to keep list building. And so when I was talking to Kelly Acevedo, she said, okay, Beth, here's what I want you to do. You have 2 assignments. One is to re-email your list and remind them of what you do. So that's where that came from. And then she said the second one is to pitch an article to the media. So that's what I'm working on next.
Okay. So, and it sounds like you are part of the Conquer Club then.
I am. I joined last year. My stepdaughter, my husband's daughter, has her own business. She's an entrepreneur. She'll be 30 this year. It's called the Rule Breakers Club. She does copywriting, and she has created this wonderful business. And she actually, I think maybe it was like 5 years ago, was one of the first that went on a Conquer Club. I think she went to Bali with Natalie McNeil. So I had been kind of following her journey and joined this past year in November. So I decided I needed that investment in myself and in my business to kind of figure all this out and kind of move forward. So I belong to a couple other travel groups like Gift Travel. I've met a lot of great people through there. I follow a lot of people that are in my industry, not necessarily my niche, but in my industry, to kind of get ideas about what they're doing. And so all of that's been really, really helpful. I bought the Blueprint for Travel back when I first started last June, that kind of said, okay, here's the steps you need to take to get started. And then to further it, I joined the Conquer Club. So.
Okay, I'm sorry. You kind of just glossed over this. So your daughter-in-law is Courtney Johnston.
Yes, she is.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
She's not my daughter-in-law. She's your stepdaughter.
Your stepdaughter. She's my
stepdaughter. And I love, her business. She just moved to Vancouver. She just packed up with Momo and they moved to Vancouver the end of June. And now she's because she can move her business anywhere.
Yeah,
right?
She's killing it.
She is killing it.
I love her. I don't know her personally, but I know the Rule Breakers Club. Probably a lot of people listening definitely do.
She's awesome. She really is awesome. I highly recommend her. It
is such a small world. It's a small online world. I had no idea.
Well, when you get into this whole entrepreneur thing, you do find, because all of us in the wedding industry are sort of entrepreneurs, whether we have a brick and mortar or whether we're online, however we work at, that's where we're at. So we kind of run in the same circles, and that's where, she introduced me to Melissa Griffin, I took her Pinterest for, all these things. Yes, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. So listeners, if you're not familiar with Courtney Johnston, she is what I know her for. She does quite a few things. She's like an awesome copywriter, but she has, she does like launch copy, and she's also really well known for her sales pages. So teaching you how to just rock your sales page so that you can, sell whatever it is, your services, your products, if you're launching a new product or even, anything, because you really just writing online is sales writing. Right? So anyway, you can check that out at therulebreakersclub.com. Don't put in it's just rulebreakersclub.com. I will link it up in the show notes. That is seriously awesome. I kind of can't get over that. Okay, so moving on then. Okay, so Facebook and Instagram do the best for you. You also mentioned that referrals do really well, and that's kind of how we got on this topic of sending out that email that said, hey, do you know anyone you can refer me to? So I'm interested because you weren't really in the industry before you started at all, except for, your travel designer. How have you been able to, or how have you or have not, I guess, been able to network with other vendors in the industry, and do you find that those relationships are helpful? Kind of tell me how that works for you since you're constantly going to new places.
So what I've been doing, several people in the industry, like photographers or makeup artists, and it's been awesome because my son is getting married in August. So I just hooked up with a makeup artist, makeup and hair. And so we kind of collaborated a little bit. And then I've been following a couple of local photographers who also do destination weddings. Okay. And I've just approached one to possibly do a guest blog post about what people should look for in a photographer for destination weddings, because that whole piece, like, I would love to guest blog post on other people's posts, but I want to invite them into mine as well for value for my customers and clients. So of course, everybody, I think, starts with family and friends, right? I mean, that's where most of us begin. That you have somebody is getting married and they need to use your services, so that's kind of how you start. Then they refer you to somebody else. And I have a cousin who was my very first customer. She and her family went to Turks and Caicos, and what was so cool about that is I said, "Can you do a little something?" They did some testimonials for me on a couple sites, but they also sent a video from where they were at thanking me for the trip and everything. It was so cool. I posted it on my social media and it got a lot of likes and hits and everything. So when you can have people do that for you to kind of build up that referral base, I'm also working on one of their kids is getting married in a couple of years. I'll be doing their destination wedding. Another one, I just did their honeymoon to Maui. I mean, so it kind of spreads out from there. And their friends, then they can tell their friends, and their friends can tell their friends. And so that's kind of, that word of mouth referral basis is so crucial to growing your business. So that's kind of how I've tapped into that.
Have you found that social media like Facebook, because I'm sure a lot of your friends and family and people that you're acquainted with, follow what you're doing. Have you found that Facebook kind of still feeds into that word of mouth?
It actually does.
Okay.
I know that people are kind of moving away from Facebook and more into Instagram, and Instagram works well too. I mean, a couple of my millennial friends that are in the travel business, they get a lot of leads from Instagram. I don't get that yet. It doesn't mean I won't.
That's right.
I think any of that social media online presence, the more you're into that and doing that consistently, the better it is for your business.
I could not agree more. And so do you have, let's kind of talk about, you just mentioned that Facebook and Instagram, they do feed into word of mouth. And I would agree. On our venue Instagram, and especially our Facebook, what's interesting, Beth, is I'm with you. We get a lot of traction on our Facebook page for Vista View Events, the venue that I own. And we get traction on our Instagram page too, and we've gotten referrals from there. But Facebook, I don't know what it is, but we also play by Facebook's rules, I guess. Like, I'm not afraid to, like right now we're running one of their monthly ads that's just a flat monthly cost for a couple months. We don't use a scheduler on Facebook. We use their native scheduler. So I feel like, honestly, some of these issues that people have with Facebook, if you would just play by their rules, which is really easy to do, you could mitigate a lot of those issues. It's not a big deal. I'm not like, I can't use Hootsuite. I have to use their native scheduler or whatever. It's not a big deal. You can still pre-schedule on there. Anyway, obviously I feel really strongly about that because I just went on that tangent. But
Right.
So what I wanted to ask was, when you're using Facebook and Instagram, what are you kind of doing on those to drum up interest in your business, I guess? And I guess an easier way to ask this question is really, what's your content plan for those sites? And since you mentioned that they are the ones that you're really the most active on right now.
I think it's kind of threefold. You want to let them know you. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot of content where they're getting to know me as a person and who I am. I'm an animal advocate. I feel very strongly about being kind and helping others. So like I've got a blog post that I'm working on right now about volunteering while you're on your honeymoon or your destination wedding and what kinds of ways you can give back to the community. Mm-hmm. So those kinds of things, kind of letting them know who I am. Then kind of giving valuable tips, feedback on destinations, places they might want to go. So offering valuable content to what my ideal, not what I would always like, but what my ideal client would like, mm-hmm. right? You kind of have to step out of that me box, which, everybody has a hard time doing sometimes, and step into their shoes. And then also every so often asking for something. Can you read this blog post? Go here and sign up for my newsletter. Those kinds of things where you're kind of asking for something back. So I kind of break it down into 3 different sections. So I'm giving a little bit of each, and not always. I'm not the type of travel professional that posts deals. That's not me. That's not who my business is. That's not where I'm gonna build my know, like, and trust with people. Is mm-hmm. to just always throw out, go to the Caribbean here for $6.99. I just don't do that. So some people do, and maybe it's useful for them. It's not for me. So that I kind of breaking it down and offering valuable content is what I find most people like. Of course, on Instagram, it's more visual than Facebook. I can do things a little bit differently. Every so often I'll throw something out on Twitter too, just to, mix it up a little bit. Mm-hmm. And Pinterest, pinning certain things. So I think your plan has to be to vary the content, give them a little piece of you, give them a little bit of information and travel tips or destination wedding tips or whatever your niche is, and then ask every so often for them to give something back to you. And I do think that when you're on Instagram or Facebook, asking a question that people can respond to often helps. They don't always respond, but that's okay.
That's true. Okay. That's true. You just got to keep showing up.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, I love this. I'm really, really enjoying this very easy 3 steps. Let them know you, give them something valuable, tips, whatever it is, and then every once in a while ask for something. Read this post, sign up for my newsletter. That's so simple but such a brilliant structure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody can use that for whatever they're in, whatever.
Agree. So at the beginning of the call, Beth, you said that you've learned a lot about niching down, or niching, however you say it, everyone.
Yeah, right. Everyone has
right? However you say it, niching or niching. And you say you've learned a lot about that since 2016. And as we wrap up the show here, I would love it if you would give us all a little piece of advice or a tip, especially for those listening who maybe know they need to niche down in their heart of hearts, but they're scared to do it because, as you mentioned, you think that if you serve everyone, that it's like that's what will lead to sales. If I serve everybody, I'll get more sales and I'll make more money. And I think you and I both agree that that's not true. So I would love to hear your just advice or a quick tip for those who are a little bit nervous to niche down in their business right now.
So niching or niching down doesn't mean that you can't do other things. However, you have to have that vision of you have to have that avatar, that vision of your ideal client in your head. You have to give them a name. There are people that go to great lengths to actually everything about that person. What do they read? What do they like to drink? Where do they like to go? how old are they? All of those things. And so when I niched down into destination weddings and honeymoons, it also made my marketing so much easier because I know who I'm marketing to. I absolutely have a vision of that person. For me, the age isn't such a big deal, but I do know what they're interested, what they're interested in, where they are at. And for me, it's all about finding a way to lessen their stress, lessen their overwhelm. So that's kind of where I come in as a destination wedding travel advisor or a honeymoon travel planner. All of those things that I do help them have less to think about because they've got so much else to think about. So think of niching down as not excluding other things that you can do for that person, because what I'm learning too is when you niche down and get them in the door for the destination wedding or honeymoon or whatever it is, then I've got the anniversary coming up. And I can say, hey, where do you want to go on your first anniversary? Can I help you with that? Or now you have the baby. Let's do a baby moon. These kinds of things can lead to further sales down the road. So I think, and a photographer can do the same thing. You do their wedding. Oh, they have they're pregnant. Do their reveal. These are things that everybody in the industry can do to help them with sales down the road. The niche just gets a step in the door.
I love it.
And then they can go forward from there.
That's brilliant. Niching down doesn't mean you can't do other things. It just means that you are marketing. As you mentioned, it makes everything more simple. You can market to all of those people, you find them, and then who knows what kind of services you could provide to them down the road or that you might be interested in.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful. Beth, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's truly been my pleasure to have you and to learn from you, and I can't thank you enough for coming on.
Thank you, Kinsey. It's been wonderful. Thank you to all the listeners too for tuning in, and this podcast offers so much value to people in the industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those are so sweet. I'll talk to you soon, Beth.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.